Okay, we are 1 minute after the hour on this fine Wednesday morning. We are going to get started with our webinar as attendees still roll in here, but we might as well get the ball rolling because we have a lot of interesting topics to cover this morning. And we do want to open it up to questions and answers from the audience at the end of the webinar as well. So my name is Jessica. I'm from VL OMNI. I'm the Director of Marketing. I will be hosting this session behind the screen here, but we're really going to focus on our two roundtable participants, Kevin Klein from ShipStation and Robin H. Smith from VL OMNI. Today, we are going to be talking about omnichannel commerce, bridging the gap between e-commerce and retail. The format today is going to be roundtable. We have a couple questions that we want to get through, and again, we'll open it up to the audience questions. But without further ado, let's get going with some brief introductions. And Robin, I will pass it over to you.
Thanks, Jessica, and great to be here this morning with you, Kevin. I'm the CEO and co-founder of VL OMNI. We've been doing integration for actually almost 27 years now. We are, the solution that we provide is a serverless microservice based iPaaS platform that's designed to integrate a merchant's application stack, both front end, so marketplaces, e-commerce, as well as the back end, ERP, 3PL, shipping. And this is becoming something that is much more complicated as e-commerce and retail merge and customer demands become way more sophisticated. You can change slides there, Jessica. I just briefly talked about the solution. We work with merchants that have complexity, and we look to provide a holistic integration strategy. Next one. We work strategically with the company, with merchants to provide a consultative approach. We're not a plug and play type solution, and it's really designed to allow a merchant to scale over time without having to revisit integrations and allow them to grow and change as the business changes. I think we're coming up on our last slide here. So who do we work with? Well, we work with brands globally. So these are some of our notable brands, Zippo Lighters, an iconic US brand, Ecobee with their smart thermostats, Zero Halliburton, who brought the moon rocks back with the Apollo landing. Tilly Endurables with their famous Tilly hat. Nicole Miller, the inventor of the long black satin dress, and so on and so forth. Our customer base is global, US, Canada, the UK, as well as the Middle East. So.
Great. With that, we'll pass it over to Kevin for a quick introduction on who he is and ShipStation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin Klein. I'm the manager of our solution providers program here at ShipStation, which includes our great partner, VL OMNI. And thank you so much to VL OMNI, Robin and Jessica, for putting this together. My history at ShipStation, been at the company for roughly about 4 years now, and started up what we called our solutions provider program, which was really designed to go out and work with companies like VL OMNI to better serve our merchant community as they scaled through e-commerce. So we work with the likes of VL OMNI, the iPaaS companies, pieces of middleware, digital agencies, and anyone that basically makes e-commerce merchants more successful generally falls underneath my team. If you're not familiar with ShipStation, Jessica, you could go to the next slide. But if you're not familiar with ShipStation, ShipStation is a SaaS-based solution that kind of its name, what it does is in its name, it really helps people fulfill products from a variety of different, what we call selling channels. So if you can conceptualize a platform, a web-based platform where an e-commerce merchant might be selling on eBay, they might be selling on Amazon, they might be selling on a Shopify, they might also be selling through, have orders within their ERP, they need to get those orders aggregated into a central location where they can then manage those orders, do pick, pack, and ship through a variety of different carrier integrations. So the carriers you're probably familiar with, the Canada Posts of the world, the USPS in the United States, UPS, FedEx. And the idea is that they're able to print those labels efficiently and at the best price. I mean, I think we all recognize that shipping is becoming this really valuable component of the e-commerce journey. And merchants are sort of grappling with how to get their hands around it and make that process more efficient. And so our application sort of provides these different types of automation updates and things that really make that experience a positive one for the end user. You can flip the next slide. So our customers include a variety of different brands, from like Billy Shoes, who has a great story about a particular type of shoes that benefits a certain customer. Saddleback Leather, which I'm actually looking at a Saddleback Leather bag right now in this room here. Cotopaxi, EcoSource backpacks, to Shady Rays, and then even some like global brands like Madeline in the UK. ShipStation is a global based company. And Madeline uses ShipStation for ship from store functionality that we can talk about today. So we really sort of cater to a variety of different customers, regardless of whether or not they're doing just pure e-commerce or if they're doing a mixture of brick and mortar and e-commerce, which I think is the topic of today's webinar. Next, and then it really gives people the ability to effectively use our app in any way. We always try to tell people that while we got our start in commerce, and ShipStation really is a sort of commerce first integration or application rather, it really has a variety of uses across even EDI, CRM, ERP, ODBC, and we work with the likes of VL OMNI to enable the success of those our merchants on our application.
Great. Thank you both for your introductions. Now that we're all familiar with who's presenting and talking today, we are going to get right into our main roundtable content of the day. And we're actually going to start off with a poll just so we can get to know our audience, the attendees, a little bit better here too. So I'm going to throw this out here. First question is, how are you selling? Are you selling just purely omnichannel, which is both e-commerce and bricks and mortar? Are you selling only e-commerce, or are you selling only bricks and mortar? And we'll leave this open for a couple minutes or a couple seconds here, just so everybody has a chance to fill it out. We'll leave it for 10 more seconds if you haven't voted.
It'll be interesting to see what the results are.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're going to close the polling here, and I will share the results. So it looks like we are speaking to the right people here today. We've got exclusively omnichannel people attending this session here. So I'm going to move right into our next question here. Our question for the panelists, rather, is what is omnichannel?
Kevin, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I think it's super relevant today. So when I was working in manufacturing, my background was in the music industry. I worked for a company called Fender for a number of years, and we used to have this phrase where we used to call it bricks and clicks. The idea of someone who was selling both in a physical location, a brick and mortar location, but they also had a mixture of e-commerce in some capacity. And I think that became more and more relevant, certainly over the past 18 months now with the pandemic, where a lot of bricks and mortar stores were closed. A lot of people sort of invested into e-commerce. And omnichannel really is a phrase, you could call it commerce, that represents, I think, a physical presence of some kind. You have people walking into your store and paying for products, and an additional online component.
Yeah, no, I would certainly agree with you. I think to your point about bricks and clicks, there was a time when the physical location was totally separate from anything related to the web. People put websites up and, they prayed that people would show up. That was already starting to change prior to the pandemic. I think with COVID hitting and the acceleration in the adoption of e-commerce by anywhere from 3 to 5 years, depending on who you read, I think that what's happened is that you've had this fusion of both the bricks and mortar and the e-com and the marketplace and the online. So people are looking at these things now, not as discrete channels, but rather as a whole retail strategy. And the bricks and mortar, the fusing of the bricks and mortar with the online is giving those that have bricks and mortar locations some really, really powerful tools that those that are just pure e-com play don't have. And I think going forward, when you start to read stuff around the future of e-commerce and where is commerce going, I think that differentiation is going to become more pronounced.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Robin. The experience now is that commerce can't be ignored, and I think that most of these brick and mortar companies, they invested a lot, at least they were initially, in physical locations, a customer experience, and they had, out of necessity or not, or they started to invest in it before the pandemic, but then the pandemic necessitated it even further. They invested in commerce, and now they're looking at these two things sort of as we come out of the pandemic, slowly but surely, how to merge those two experiences and better serve their customers, regardless of whether or not they're doing business in a physical location or in an online experience.
Yeah, no, I would agree, and I think the days of the big box retailer, which is just basically a glorified warehouse, and there was all that discussion prior to the pandemic around showrooming and so on. I think that the evolution towards a smaller footprint curated experience fusing and being melded into the e-com opens up a whole bunch of questions and things that companies have to think about. It's no longer just my website is independent from my ERP and my POS, and I'll use a plugin to connect these things. It's really now I've got to start thinking about what the experience is going to be that if I order online and I pick up in store, do I have an upsell opportunity? And how does loyalty work? How do returns work? So it's shipping,
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a whole pile of things here that I think that people need to be cognizant of and thinking about when they're looking at the omni-channel world.
Yeah, and when we were working in manufacturing, and I was working with like brick and mortar companies who were like the Kohl's, these big box stores that were sort of getting into certain categories. The biggest challenge that they faced was this intermingling of data, right, and being able to bring it into a central place where they can do an evaluation. Because something might, like a particular SKU, right, which if you're a buyer or a merchandiser at a big box store, that you think in SKUs and how much does that SKU make me, and what they were realizing is that they were like, okay, some of these SKUs are very popular online. Some SKUs are better in the physical location, but I don't have visibility to be able to blend the two. And I think the merging of Omnichannel is, how do I get visibility from a data perspective on my entire business, both online and brick and mortar, and how does that come together to better or make it a more efficient business? Which is where VL OMNI, I think, really comes in and sort of helps aggregate that space or that data.
There's no question, and I think your point on velocity of products and what is selling better in one area versus another is really important from a visibility perspective. But I think the melding of the two actually also highlights something that you just brought up and have alluded to, and that's the quality of your tech stack. One of the things that we see with a lot of the pure play bricks and mortar people who are wholesale or retail is that their tech stacks on the back end tend to be very antiquated, and they don't lend themselves easily to real-time API-driven intervention. And so I think part of that melding of the experience is to figure out, okay, if you're shipping out of store, for example, which you could do from a physical location, how are you managing those orders, and how are you shipping out? What are you using to to build the shipment and to print the labels and so on and so forth? And I think the other element to that is now the POS. How if you have a physical store, how does the POS integrate to that? How does the POS integrate to the front end? Do I meld my offline and my online? And this becomes particularly acute when you start to think about loyalty, of using points in two spaces, which typically have never been coexistent. So there's a whole bunch of things that looking at the tech stack opens up. And I think this is an area we see in our sales cycle where C-suite wants to do something, but the lack of investment in the tech stack is really holding them back.
Yeah, good data drives good decisions in a lot of ways. I remember I saw that a big box store, I won't say the name, but they were doing one of their number one SKUs with us, wasn't something that they were stocking in store because the two businesses weren't even talking to one another. The e-commerce division was, and I think now merchants are waking up, or at least customers are waking up, that omnichannel, this blending of the two, can't be ignored, and there's advantages to having a more unified approach.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, just think of the whole upsell opportunity of a high velocity product selling on the web that you buy online, pick up in store, and now you've got an upsell opportunity on the physical side of things.
Yep.
If you don't have that integration between the two, you're missing out in massive ways. I think of some of the offline online experiences that I've had here in Canada. Canadian Tire have an app where I can place my order on their website. I can do curbside pickup, and they've got designated slots in their parking lots where I pull in, I load the app on my phone, I put in the slot number where I am, and I've got real time back and forth with the person who's bringing my order out. And do I need anything else perhaps as part of the process? So at the beginning of the pandemic, Canadian Tire's experience was garbage. Now it is so slick that it just blew me away. I couldn't believe it, and I was just buying a fire pit. So it was,
exactly.
Yeah. So so I think these are technological challenges, but they're also mindset challenges, that these are not separate channels, that they're now coming together in this omni-channel world. We used to talk multi-channel. Do you have an opinion on that? Multi, omni? I mean, people use the word interchangeably, but I think they are different.
Yeah. So when I hear the word multi-channel, I often think like a commerce approach. And I often see a lot of e-commerce brands will incorporate some sort of multi-channel, like a marketplace approach, plus their own shopping cart, plus maybe a mixture of drop shipping. It's sort of like, where do you want to put your products? But I think where it really distinguishes is this omni-channel is really the physical component, where they've got to your point about, Canadian Tire, like some tactile experience, because brands want to be close to their customers, and they want that experience that they've built online to converge. I mean, you don't want to have this beautiful online experience and then they go to your physical location and, nobody talks to them, or it's not this, it's not the same vibe. There's certainly a value to continuity across channels.
Yeah.
And we always stress that at ShipStation, like, hey, go multi-channel. Certainly go out and be on eBay and go out and be on, multiple channels. That's great. But if your brand isn't continuous, or certainly your brand voice isn't continuous across every experience that your customers have, then it's kind of a jarring experience for that customer, and it does impact loyalty, and it certainly impacts their overall experience.
Yeah, no, you bring up a good point about customer experience and customer service, because I think people tend to forget that in the online world, we've been sensitized now to this super high level of interaction. And when you order online, you're getting immediate feedback on what's happening with your order in the majority of cases. I mean, there's still sites out there that don't do it very well. And that is an indication and a reflection on the commitment to the e-com strategy, as far as I'm concerned. But I think where communication becomes even more critical now, when the melding of the two, the offline and the online, is that traditionally bricks and mortar retail, I mean, they've paid minimum wage. They hire people who are just, I mean, it's just a job. It's really just a transaction. We've completely moved away from the days of my grandparents, when you went to a retailer, it was a career for these people. They worked in a retail store. They knew their customers. They knew what their customer wanted. We've completely lost that today. And I think that what this whole melding is going to do is it's going to force retailers to up their game on the physical side. I just had an experience with a company in Nashville, an apparel company who are a ShipStation customer. And I mean, online experience that went sideways because of shipping issues, cross-border shipping issues, but their customer service went above and beyond what I would have expected. And they have a physical location that they ship out of. So these guys have figured out that you have to service the hell out of your customer.
Yeah.
And it was a phenomenal experience. I'm talking about them, so they clearly made me happy. So I think that this is a challenge that a lot of bricks and mortar retailers are going to have to deal with.
Precisely. Yep.
So, the other element related to that is actually loyalty. And I know yesterday we were talking about this, Kevin, that one of the things that we've seen recently in the loyalty side of things is that people are traditionally putting loyalty into their e-commerce. But in the bricks and mortar world, you've got this loyalty game that's going on inside the ERP. And how do you merge the two together? And one of the surprising things that we've found in the loyalty sphere is that a lot of the loyalty applications don't have APIs that allow us to push offline data into the online experience. And that's a hindrance. On the shipping side, you guys have got phenomenal APIs, so it's easy to integrate between the online and the offline world, and to use the shipping component in store. So I think there's some areas here where people need to think a little further about where they go with this tech stack that they choose.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to sort of the broader conversation around the to your point, the merging of tech stacks, right? So there are applications, and I mean, if you go and check them, there's probably 100 different hundreds of email service providers,
Yep.
Marketing tools, marketing automation. I mean, e-commerce. There's, and every other day there's a new app that's the new shiny app that's available on there that they can download or augment their store to provide some sort of value or conversion. And I'm sure people on this call are probably nodding their heads and going, yeah, how do I sort through them all? And how do I decide, which one's the best one for me? And to your point, it's, they have to be strategic about which ones they decide on, because if there is any aspect of their business, or if they want to go into omnichannel, those applications need to be applicable across their entire tech stack, including their ERP, because that experience that you're creating over here in your e-commerce space, if you are serious about doing omnichannel and having that experience be replicated across a physical location, those have to be compatible with your current environment or whatever technology you're running. And you're right, we see that all the time, especially with the concept of returns.
Yeah.
The idea of being able to return a product very easily has become pretty pervasive in our society, largely because of the experience of some, key players in e-commerce like Amazon. I think I always like to say the best experience that a customer has is the new bar. So that's become their experience has become better, and they want options. They want to be able to drop it off at a locker. They want to be able to drop it off at a Kohl's location. Kohl's recently, I think it was maybe last year, came together with Amazon to make all of their physical locations return locations for Amazon products. returning a product through Amazon's not hard. And so if they go over here to a merchant and if it's difficult, or if they only have one option, or they have to talk to a customer service rep or something like that for hours to get a return going, then that's going to frustrate them. So there are lots of return applications out there, but do they speak to your physical location? Do they offer your physical locations as drop-off points? Those are the types of things I think merchants have to think about when they're moving into omnichannel, or they're trying to blend those two models together.
No, the return one is actually a very interesting one, because we recently ran into this with a retailer here in Canada, where multi-store, they've got upwards of 130 stores, and they wanted to have an online return experience. And one of the challenges we ran into with the return options that were available in the Shopify tech stack was that none of them could handle multi-location returns, because they were all predicated on shipping back to the retailer, either to one single physical location, or to a 3PL or some sort of a warehouse. Whereas what this retailer wanted to do was to allow the customer to go on their website, bring up the order, return the product to a physical store, and have the same kind of experience as if they shipped it back, and then put that product back into the store inventory. Well, quite a few of the very popular return products that are in the tech stack, the Shopify world, couldn't handle that business model. So it was no different than the loyalty guys who don't have the APIs to create an offline customer, load up offline points effectively, and tie a customer. This is no different. So some of these things need to be thought about when you're starting to merge the two. And I must say, on the shipping side, from what we've seen, you guys are numero uno there, because you guys have got the APIs. So somebody on the shipper engine side really thought through the whole process.
Yeah, nothing's more frustrating than having to fight to get a fulfillment label to ship something back. I think what's important is that, from our perspective, is if they want to fulfill the product or ship the product back, make that process simple. Yeah. Get them the return label without a lot of hassle, without a lot of interaction, right? Because they may have 20 minutes on their lunch break where they're trying to return this item. It needs to be fast and simple. And so we've set up some functionality to handle that. But then just being able to give options as well, I think, is your point. If you have a physical location, make that an option, because then, to your point, it reinforces the ability to make a return purchase. They may walk in and go, I just returned this, I want to exchange it for this, or I want to try and see if I think the likelihood of exchanging it for something in the store is high if they go back in. And so if you're not offering that as an option, and not everyone has 130 stores and all that kind of coverage to be able to do it, but certainly having that as an option for customers who are local, I think is pretty valuable.
Yeah. No, I would certainly agree. And then the other element around that is then order visibility. I think this is another big one that people forget about, is that, do I have that central point where I can, whether I'm online or in store, I can look at the order. And this speaks to what we had talked about earlier about a lack of investment in the back-end tech stack. One of the things we've seen a lot of recently is companies that are having to revamp their whole ERP infrastructure because they're not able to do the kinds of things that they want to do. Split orders, for example, between shipping from a warehouse or shipping from a store, or this is a product I don't have in the store, so I want to ship it from my warehouse, but this product I have in the store and the customer wants to come and pick it up. So all of these kind of things as well. People have tried to do it in the e-commerce cart stack, and those kind of products were never designed for that kind of stuff. So it's this whole layering of an order management system. I found it interesting yesterday that Lightspeed announced that they were acquiring NuOrder and ECWid, and bringing e-commerce and that more sophisticated order management together. It's going to be really interesting to see how that changes the landscape also.
Well, and that's becoming sort of almost the necessity at this point. So I mean, most of the ERPs now are rolling out some sort of embedded order management functionality because they recognize that these kinds of decisions around, hey, I've got multiple locations and I need to route inventory to one of those respective locations. I may need to route in a shipping label, for example, to a third-party fulfillment warehouse that gives me coverage on the East or West Coast, is no longer a nice to have, it's a must to have in the overall e-commerce experience. And the reason for that is, again, I come back to this concept of that last best experience is what people expect across their digital experience. People are now expecting 2-day, in some cases, same day, 1 day. I mean, I've had things where I've ordered stuff from Amazon, selfishly, where I needed it in an hour and it came to it was same day. It came right to my office. So, I wouldn't expect every e-commerce merchant to have that level of experience, but I imagine a lot of people would, and they certainly, they certainly need that visibility. So order management and the ability to make those decisions from an automated perspective is really key, I think, in the next 5 years, giving themselves the ability to do that last mile. And there are some fulfillment networks that are popping up that are trying to make people a little bit more competitive, because Amazon's just going to keep pushing the bar down, and they're going to make it 1 day, they're going to make it 6 hours, they're going to make it 2 minutes, whatever. There's only so far they can go, right? And that's their advantage right now. I think what a lot of companies are realizing is going, wait a second, our biggest advantage is we have a physical location and we have the ability for the merchant to have these, or the customer rather, to have these options that allow them to get something quickly or go pick it up or have that human experience. And that's their greatest strength. They just need to be able to capitalize on it. And that's why these order management applications are being rolled out.
Oh yeah, no. And maybe after Jeff Bezos comes back from space
I saw
and melds the Star Trek stuff together, that we're all going to have replicators in our houses and we'll just create it. So I mean,
now you're buying the replicator pattern, right? Instead of actual product.
Exactly. Everything we've talked about here has been bricks and mortar retail and D2C, direct to consumer. I think one of the interesting plays that's going on right now too is in the B2B world. I mean, you're seeing a lot of vendor dropship going on where the retailers are pushing orders down to the supplier to ship to the customer. The experience is being packaged by the major retailers. So you got to have your brand, the retailer's branding and look and feel and so on and so forth. But I was talking recently to one of our customers and, he was complaining to me about this whole thing of vendor dropship. And he said, it's far easier for me to ship a pallet of 1,000 items to Costco than it is to ship 1,000 single orders to 1,000 different customers. Mm-hmm. And I said to him, I said, why wouldn't you look at that whole of changing that orientation and shipping and selling direct to the consumer? Because you're doing all the work for the retailer. The retailer's taking a pretty hefty cut on what you're selling. And I think that we're going to start to see a shift in this whole world, is that the smaller bricks and mortar retailers who have the e-com play are going to thrive, and the omnichannel world is going to flourish, and they're going to have to deal with all these challenges. But I think we're going to see a major shift with some of the major retailers in the sense that the punitive chargebacks and the compliance charges and so on and so forth are going to force some retailers, some distributors and manufacturers to rethink their whole approach to retail.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, if you think like 25 years ago, it was I send a pallet of stuff to Home Depot or Bed Bath & Beyond or wherever, and they put it in their stores and they sell it. And I work with, a merchandiser to bring those products in. And what those big brands realized was, wait a second, we need e-commerce. They started standing up sites, and then they go, well, we'll just ask our vendors to drop ship all of our products. Now there's advantages to the manufacturer for that. The manufacturers can get all of their products on their websites and they get more coverage, as long as they can provide. So there's one benefit there, but you're right. It does, experience a challenge when that retailer, let's say Kohl's, for example, says, hey, look, we're only going to stock one SKU now and you can drop ship the rest. Your whole business model has been upended. ShipStation experienced this in a very real way because if you're doing, distribution and you're doing drop ship and you're doing some form of commerce or D2C, how do you manage all of that?
Yeah.
And how do you manage that, especially if you're doing what's called a blind drop ship, where you don't even the retailer doesn't even want the end customer to know you're involved in any way. Now you have to manage the branding around it. So we built out a lot of functionality, and we work with a lot of drop shippers on sort of abiding by that complexity, third-party billing, the ability to match branding, and then just to manage all this chaos in the same way that they're managing multiple brands, or they may be managing things on their e-commerce multi-channels, selling channels. You bring up a good point about the shift, though, because that shift has happened, and I actually saw it firsthand in B2C and B2B in my manufacturing background. Is 10 years ago, 15 years ago, Fender was not selling directly online.
Exactly.
Now you can go to their website and go and buy a product unheard of for a company that was that old, to be able to make that shift. And that shift happened primarily for the reason that you're outlining is, hey, we're already doing all the work. We're basically drop shipping to consumer on behalf of XYZ retailer. Why are we not just doing this directly through our website? And I think more brands are sort of waking up to that realization that it has to be both. It can't just be pure B2B. It can't just be physical locations. It can't just be commerce. The retailers and the brands that are going to win in the future are going to blend those together to something that's basically akin to commerce versus just being like these different channels.
Well, your Fender example is a really, really interesting one to me, because if you look at the way Fender has gone online, sure, they're selling through reverb.com and they're selling through the retailers that are out there selling, guitars, because a guitar, you want to pick it up and you want to play it and you want to feel it. But if you think about what they've done with Fender Play, and the whole subscription model around education and all of that, which to your point, 10 years ago, nobody would have ever thought that Fender would start giving guitar lessons, and so you got Billy Gibbons on Fender Play, given training on chords. I mean, it's this is where this whole merging of experience and commerce. Now, Fender's got the wherewithal to do it, but I think this comes back to what we had started talking about, which was this merging of the two really forces people to think strategically. And I think a lot of people are thinking tactically, and they're making decisions tactically. Oh, well, I've got to have a website. I need loyalty plugged into it, as opposed to stepping back and saying, what does my brand represent? How do I fit all the pieces together? Fender to me is a perfect example of an organization that stepped back and said, how do we tighten the relationship with the customer? Because we want them to buy, if they buy that Stratocaster, maybe they start with a Squire and then they go to a Strat, and then they become ambitious and they get a Telecaster. I mean,
sure. It's I think larger, it's about how do brands stay close to their customers, and how do they not become disintermediated in any way from that experience, because that experience is everything. The experience they have with the retailer, the experience they have with the brand is how they become a long-term customer. So I'm curious, let's ask the audience. I think we got a poll question, Robin, about
I think we do.
doing, I'm just curious on the call, Jessica, I think we have a question about this, don't we?
Yes, so we've got, if you're doing Omnichannel, let's actually go to the next one that we had scheduled here anyway.
Okay, yeah.
So the question is, if you're doing Omnichannel currently, have you integrated online and offline? Has that been something that's been a priority for you, or are you still considering it?
I think it's a whole area that people are really struggling with, and you see it in a lot of the marketing material that ERP vendors are putting out. And, I mean, Klarna this morning, they just announced an acquisition of a marketing platform, an SMS marketing automation platform. I mean, you're starting to see all this stuff pulling together. So,
Yeah. People are, I think, tired of this fragmented application space where, there's multiple apps that I have to go choose from. Oh, look, oh, wow, okay. So some people for sure have integrated. That's impressive. I mean, a lot of the certainly a lot of the merchants that we integrate or speak with, it's almost like e-commerce was set up as a separate business division.
yeah,
And it's not really, it wasn't a huge part of their business initially. I think I joked with you, Robin, yesterday. They sort of put the nephew in charge of it and said, "Go do commerce or go make this happen." But what happened was that became their lifeline through the pandemic, and it became this giant part of their business. And they went, "Okay, now we got to invest in this." And now they've got these almost two parallel tracks from a tech perspective, and they're trying to merge the two together and blend the experience. And so it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think the nephew analogy is a really good one, because we see that regularly where, the son of the owner just came out of university and maybe he's got a comp sci degree or he did marketing or something in that, but he's the expert because he's on TikTok and he's got Instagram on his phone. The other area I think that a lot of people, that we see a lot of, is that people think simplistically about it, and they will go to their ERP vendor and they'll say, "Can you connect this to this?" without thinking of the big picture. So I've seen a lot of retailers get sucked into scenarios where they're using a plugin, or they're using the approach that the ERP vendor has suggested, and that's built for the lowest common denominator. It may fit, it may not fit. And I mean, I've seen this where people are throwing good money at something and then realizing once they're into it that they can't do this, they can't do that, and now they're having to reinvest. And so I think coming back to it, thinking strategically and looking holistically at things is really, really critical. There's no one size fits all in this stuff.
Yeah, and we talk about this a lot at ShipStation, largely because you're right. There is this perception that, hey, can I just get this one thing solved? Where in this case, it's shipping. Can I just find a shipping vendor that says, "Hey, I've got the best price, use us. It's simple. We've got these applications." And then merchants, as they sort of scale, realize that, well, I need to be looking multi-carrier. Some carriers have better rates on certain weight classes, or they may have better rates on certain routes. Maybe internationally, some carriers win versus other carriers. And they are sort of grappling with the concept of, well, how do I manage that? And how do I put that in a place that's digestible? In addition to just the complexity of managing multiple channels, including my brick and mortar. I'm shipping from this location. And so we try to cut through all that, and we try to give our merchants tools that allow them to satisfy that complexity. And then the ERP always comes up too, Robin. I mean, that's really where I think VL OMNI comes into the equation. Is now they've got all these channels. There's sort of all these things living on this, on this island almost. And it's now a significant portion of their revenue, and they need to integrate that into their ERP. Their CFO is telling them, "Hey, I need visibility on this business unit," and they have no idea where to go from there. And they get stuck in situations where they need that integration, and that's really where we come and bring in our best of breed consultants like VL OMNI.
Yeah, no, and it's a really good point where the e-commerce is siloed and it's separate. I mean, in the past week, I've spoken to 2 sites where they've gone with what the agency has recommended from an integration approach. They're into it, and it's not working. It's not working for them because it was not spec'd out with a global view. The CFOs, to your point, CFO's not getting the financial visibility. They're having to go in and manually correct stuff, and so as a result, it's costing them. And I think that the melding of the two, bricks and mortar, retail and e-com, is going to actually force a reckoning here, because the sophistication now in merging the two channels is not something that is a tick box on an RFP. It's really now about strategy and how do you link the two correctly. And it's not just the transactional information, but it's also the experiential information. So,
actually, that's a good time to intersect with our last poll question and pivot the conversation towards customer experience and loyalty. So our last poll question for the audience is, do you do any rewards or customer loyalty programs?
and then I would think, Jessica, we're getting into questions.
I think so. We've got one more panel question that I want to address as a group here, and then, but I will open up if there are any questions from now until the top of the hour. Please submit them with the question panel on Zoom, and we will bring them up as a group at the last 5 minutes. Okay, and we'll end this poll. So last chance. And here are our results on rewards and customer loyalty. So we have some strong no's and some yes, but only online or offline. So it's not a merged experience there.
So this is an area I think we're going to see a lot of change in the next 6 months to a year, as the world changes, and I think there's going to be some reckoning on the loyalty side, because you would be astounded at how many loyalty solutions that are in use today can't handle that business model. It's either one or the other. It's not the ability to meld the two. So
yeah, and well, I think you're absolutely right, Robin. I think a lot of that is going to be because so many brands have gone online.
Yeah.
And so many brands are now more visible from a national standpoint, from a global standpoint than they ever have. I mean, you could call it the direct-to-consumer revolution, which was really accelerated by the pandemic. And how do brands, if I'm selling, widget A and there are 10 other widget A's on Amazon, and it's becoming more and more crowded. So I think brands are looking for ways to certainly differentiate themselves a little bit from the market and from their competition. And I think loyalty is a great way to do that. And I can't tell you how many loyalty programs I'm in. I've already been enrolled in them. I think I purchased a car 5 years ago, and I'm in this loyalty program. They still send me, hey, you're earning points just by logging in and doing all these things. It's engagement. But I have to admit, I'll log into a loyalty program or see what's going on with my points, which is proven out to be a very effective way to engage your customers. If someone asks me to, it's like, well, what are my points? What can I redeem them for? What's there? And I'm engaging with that brand on a level that's not, necessarily me purchasing something from them, but it's giving me that brand in front of me consistently enough to where in the future I might.
Yeah, no, and meshing with loyalty is all the communication of telling people when new product is available and not just being passive about it. I think this is an area where a lot of retailers fall down. You either get blasted by spammy emails saying, I'm giving you a 20% discount. The thing that drives me insane, and whoever solves this is going to be, really rich, is you go on a website, you're already subscribed to their newsletter, and you get the pop-up. You haven't even started looking at the website, and you get the pop-up that fills your screen saying, sign up to our newsletter and you'll get 10% off your first order. Well, I've already ordered 10 times from you and I'm already subscribed to your newsletter. So why the hell are you putting this thing up on my screen?
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And from our standpoint, so yes, I have that same frustration. And I think they're even potentially Chrome extensions now, Shopify's playing around. They just announced that their relationship with Google around their POS. I think there could be a potential in the future for the shopping carts, like a Shopify, if they were to say, hey, the Shopify plugin for Chrome, if you're on any one of our sites, there's a unified customer experience across all of Shopify, which that's that would be amazing. That would be just, if you could be one customer, no matter where you go, if you're on a Shopify site, it's the same payment, it's all saved. It's almost like the Amazon experience across e-commerce. I think they did. Yeah.
2 years ago, I think have this universal thing that It
I
recognizes.
haven't seen it live yet. I haven't seen it in the flesh. I'm sure I'm going to get like an angry email. This thing's live here, but I haven't seen it. But like that's one way to do it. From a shipping perspective, just to bring it back to like my experience here, is that we really find that loyalty is driven by communication, right? To your point, communication around where is my item. So we always laughed at that shipping email, and I'm guilty of this all the time. The shipping notification email is the most clicked on email from that a merchant can send, because if someone's excited about something, they want to know where it is. And I'm guilty of this all the time. Like if I order like a guitar or something that I like, I'll be like, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? I'll check that email 100 times, right? But we don't see a lot of merchants, at least ShipStation merchants do, but I don't see it across all of e-commerce, really kind of like making that email experience pop, reinforcing the brand, reinforcing the things that drive loyalty. And like my guess, Robin, that story you told was wonderful about, hey, I had a really positive experience from a shipping standpoint. There was an error, but they made it right. That's going to drive loyalty. And then being able to funnel that into some sort of trackable perspective, that's the next challenge. We know what drives loyalty, but like, how do you do that at scale is really the challenge.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think communication is key. If you think of e-commerce and the bricks and mortar, it's a trust relationship. Like if I have a crappy experience with a bricks and mortar retailer, I'm not going to go back. Like if the sales reps are surly and unhelpful, and I'm not going to go back. It's no different online. It's a trust relationship. It's even bigger trust relationship online, because you got a pretty website, but I don't even know who you are. Like I have no mechanism to find out where you live or anything like that. One of the things that I've never understood is why merchants don't put a physical address or don't put a location on their website under the contact us. It's just like an email form. Well, that doesn't inspire confidence. And to your point about the shipping email is the most clicked on. I am not surprised to hear that, because the higher value the order, the more important it is in that trust relationship for me to know where that shipment is and to know what's going on. I mean, if I've ordered a $20 thing, I don't really care. It shows up. But if I've ordered like $500 or $600 of product, I want to know where that stuff is. Communicate with me.
Yeah.
Tell me what's going on. So,
yeah, I want to track it. I want to know when it's going to show up so I can be home, right? I mean, there's a million reasons why people want to click on that email, but if someone's clicking on that, or they're finding that email and they're probably going into their phone and going ship notification, they're looking for that brand name. Why not make that email great, right? I mean, why not make that a touch point that allows you to reinforce brand, to potentially offer up discounts, to say, hey, here's the number you call. I would joke, Robin, they probably don't put a physical address on there for the exact reason we think they don't want people to show up, right? Maybe they don't have a physical location that they want people to show up to. But if they do, and they have a brick and mortar experience, by all means, they should put it on there, because they may walk in, they may want to see the product, it could reinforce it. There's a bunch of reasons why, if you have a physical location, you should put that address on
well,
there.
and that's where the melding of the offline and the online comes into play, because if I don't know you've got physical locations, or I don't know where your physical locations are, or I don't know what your physical location return policy is, because on the web you're hiding behind an email form.
Yep.
I mean, it's no different than 15 years ago when everybody complained about jail mail. That you couldn't get anybody on the phone, and you had to navigate through this voicemail tree.
Yep. Exactly.
I'm possibly dating myself here, but
I know the jail mail reference.
All right. To wrap up the conversation here as we wait for any questions from the audience to come in, what comes next for Omnichannel, including e-commerce and retail?
What comes next? Kevin,
So I think what's going to happen, and I've already seen this, is I think successful e-commerce merchants are going to start standing up physical locations. I think they're going to start standing them up across the places where they know their orders are going. And we see this in ShipStation. People will look, we have like this insights tab, which is pretty great. And this is like data driving good decisions, right? They'll go in and they'll go, okay, 50% of my orders are going to Southern California. They will stand up a location in Southern California. Something about their product is resonating there. So I think we're seeing this successful e-commerce. They figured this piece out first, and now they're going to come in and they're going to set up physical locations, not only to like blend the e-commerce omni-channel experience, but also to be competitive from a shipping standpoint, because now that physical location can be a warehouse, it can be a place where they can host product, where people can pick up from store. They're giving their customers more options. And I'm already seeing that today. The merchants I've known that have never had a physical location are all looking at it going, hey, real estate's drying up. All these stores are closing. There's, the commercial real estate market is, there's opportunity there to go in, and why not? Because that's the great place to expand your presence.
Yeah, no, I would completely agree with you on both points. I think physical location for direct-to-consumer web-based merchants is going to become a big one. One of the things that we see in the data that we've got, and part of our analytics dashboard on our platform, allows merchants to handle this and to look at this kind of stuff, is product velocity.
Mm-hmm.
Product velocity and shipping velocity are two things that actually you wouldn't think they go together, but they go together. And what I mean there is that there are products in a retailer's product mix that take longer to ship and to get to the customer.
Mm-hmm.
For a variety of reasons. Maybe it's because it's bulky, maybe it's because it's more expensive, so on and so forth. Then you've got products that have got a very high velocity. And I think what you're going to see is you're going to see much more analytics when people do go into that offline environment around product mix. People are going to be a lot more sensitive to product mix. Big retailers have done this for eons, but a lot of the little retailers, the tools were never available for them to do this kind of stuff. And I think that we're going to see that change, where people are going to pay much more attention to the product mix and product velocity, and then shipping speed. Are my carriers saying, is FedEx or UPS coming to me and saying, well, we're guaranteeing 2-day delivery, but it's actually taking 2.5 or 3 days. If you don't have the data to be able to go after the carrier, or to say, okay, how do I rationalize? Maybe this is a product that I shouldn't be selling, because just because you have a product doesn't mean that you should be selling it. I think are things that people are really going to start to have to look at.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that the larger the larger brick and mortar companies like a Walmart, like a Target, are probably, and I think this is already starting to happen, is open up their marketplace. Mm-hmm. For the e-commerce sellers to offer pickup from store. So if I'm selling on Walmart.com, I'm selling from Target.com. I think they've baited it to where now you, as an e-commerce merchant who maybe has a great product, but you don't necessarily have physical locations all over the United States or the world, can go to a Walmart and say, okay, I want to use you as a pickup location. And they're already starting to experiment. That Target and Walmart have been doing that with their own products. Like if they sell something on that's Walmart.com, picking up from one of their stores, but they're just kind of starting to explore that with third parties. And what would that look like? So that's an interesting revolution, because that opens up all kinds of possibilities for brands to potentially not only, now they have physical locations all over the place, as well as companies that are doing that.
Yeah, and in fact, Best Buy here in Canada has been doing that for some time, where they, on their marketplace, you can do vendor drop ship, but you can also ship to their location for somebody to go and pick up. So yeah, I completely agree. To me, what's interesting here is there a play downstream in the market for that, for a retailer that is, say, regional or mid-size, to do the same sort of thing? And I think you're starting to see cooperation amongst brands to bring resources together where they can help each other coexist. And you see it on the design side. There's no reason you can't do it on the fulfillment side either.
Yep, precisely.
Those are some of the things that I think are certainly going to happen. I think the The other thing that's going to happen is this heightened customer retention sensitivity and need to communicate and be where your customer is, which we've been talking about forever, but more so, how do I form a proper relationship with that customer is going to become even more important.
Exactly. Yep.
Great. That was some incredible discussion. Thank you both, Kevin and Robin, for the illuminating conversation back and forth there. That wraps our webinar on omnichannel commerce. We thank everybody who was able to attend today, and we will be sharing this video recording out with the wider world shortly. Thank you again, guys.
Thanks to VL OMNI, Robin, Jessica, thank you so much for having us. We hope to be back soon.
Thanks, Kevin. It was great chatting with you, and same, looking forward to the next round.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.